Abu Ghraib was not the only confinement facility that caused controversy.
No, indeed. There was Club Guantanamo, the Pentagon's maximum security prison in Cuba.
I don't understand how it is that the United States maintains a prison in Castro's Cuba. That seems as weird as the CIA handing over suspects for Syria's Assad to torture.
Well, the U.S. has had a base in Cuba since right after the Spanish-American War. In recent decades, it's become useful as a place to warehouse people that Washington wants to confine without bringing into the United States proper. In the 1990s, for example, the U.S. government had stashed Haitian and Cuban refugees in Guantanamo until they could be sent home.
Warehouse people is an ugly phrase.
Well, I use it advisedly. For an administration looking for an offshore location to lock up terrorism suspects indefinitely, without being answerable to federal courts, Gitmo seemed ideal. That nosy reporters and human rights organizations would likewise be kept at arm's length was an added plus.
But it didn't work out as planned.
No. Guantanamo became a magnet of critical attention, and for the United States, a public relations disaster. Critics called it the American Gulag, comparing it to the notorious network of Soviet prison camps.
Was the comparison at all fair?
Probably not, but the charge gives you a sense of how Gitmo became a lightning rod. Here, the Bush administration is trying to portray its global war on terrorism as a contest of freedom-loving democracies against an axis of evil. Meanwhile, it struggles to rebut the charge that the United States itself is doing evil, as it imprisons people without any pretense of due process, holds them indefinitely without charge, and subjects them to extreme abuse. For those with a taste for irony, there's a darkly humorous aspect to the United States maintaining a notorious prison on Cuban soil. After all, for decades, U.S. officials had criticized the Cuban government for denying people due process, holding them without charge, and subjecting them to abuse.
Barack Obama was among those critical of Guantanamo.
He was indeed, and when he ran for president in 2008, Obama vowed, if elected, to close the place down. In the very first week of his presidency, he signed an executive order directing its closure within a year.
But over 5 years later, it's still open.
Closing Gitmo required disposing of the prison population, which peaked somewhere in the high 700s. Where would they go? Obama discovered that there was no easy answer to that question. They couldn't be transferred to prisons on U.S. territory. Congress had nixed that option. They couldn't be sent back to their country of origin or to some other country unless the receiving government agreed to take them. Not easily arranged. And even when Washington could find a government willing to accept a Guantanamo alum, there was a concern that once released, detainees might wage jihad against the United States. Regularizing their continued confinement by convicting them of criminal charges posed a challenge given the fact that many had been tortured or otherwise mistreated.
A mess.
A mess that the George W. Bush administration had created by assuming that war would let them get away with actions that in normal times they would not have dared try.
Did Obama achieve anything?
The total size of the Gitmo prison population did gradually drop. By mid-2014, some 149 prisoners remained, most behind bars for more than a decade, few having been charged, many known to be innocent.
Innocent?
Yes. Not as in guilt not proven. Innocent as in didn't do anything wrong. Erroneously detained. At any rate, desperate prisoners went on prolonged hunger strikes. U.S. authorities responded by forcibly feeding them. Put them in restraints, run a tube through their nasal cavity and into their stomach, and pump in nourishment. Many attempted suicide. At least 6 succeeded. As much as Americans have tried to avert their gaze, Gitmo represents a major failure of the American system of justice and has left an indelible stain on the American reputation. As a battlefield in America's war for the greater Middle East, it has hurt more than helped.
Who says so?
Glad you asked. Current CIA Director John Brennan has stated on the record that, quote, the prison at Guantanamo Bay undermines our national security. Closing it, he contends, will actually make Americans safer. In the words of former Secretary of State Colin Powell, Guantanamo offers, quote, radicals an opportunity to say, you see, this is what America is all about. They're all about torture and detention centers. Vice President Joe Biden has described Gitmo as, quote, the greatest propaganda tool that exists for recruiting terrorists around the world. And President Obama himself has stated publicly that Guantanamo is al-Qaeda's, quote, #1 recruiting tool. Over the several decades that America's war for the greater Middle East has unfolded, the United States has committed more than a few unforced errors. Guantanamo certainly has to rank in the top 5.